everyone! Welcome back to our channel. I'm Cindy, Mrs. B.
I'm Mado, Mr. B.
And you're watching Mr. and Mrs. B of Moss Design House.
Woo!
In today's episode, we're gonna talk about interior design secrets.
Ooh. So the first secret is
The power of ratio. So what is that? There are two ratios that we practice in interior design. The 70-30 rule and the 60-40 rule. So yung 70-30 rule, I personally practice this, and I think we've discussed this in one of our episodes, but it really depends on how adventurous our client is. But this ratio refers to the ratio of furniture that are matchy-matchy in a space and a wild card that gives personality. So normally in a space, to create like balance, and naman we're all about personality, what we do is 70% would be all, say, on the same color palette, on the same shape or same style, but 30% we leave that out for a wild card. Something that would dictate the space, something that when you enter, it would be a focal point.
or a talk piece.
Or a talking piece, correct.
Yeah.
And that doesn't apply only in furniture, it applies perhaps on the walls. Maybe 70% of the walls can be just one type, and then 30% of that could be, a cladding or an accent piece, right? Now, the second ratio is actually the 60-40 rule. This is actually the golden rule or golden ratio that interior designers use to achieve perfection and visual balance. The ratio refers to 60% of the floor space is filled with furnishings while 40% is left blank. I'm not into okay, kailangan natin 60 ng lahat ng gamit yung floor space. Otherwise, it would create a bit of a clutter and it would appear very overcrowded. So we always like to keep 40% of our floor space negative, meaning to say blanco.
Empty space.
Empty spaces. There, that's the concept of the 70-30 and the 60-40 rule. The second interior design secret is the power of odd numbers. So the odd numbers, specifically number 3, have long been sort of like an ally of interior designers and stylists around the world. Ever since I remember practicing ID, I've always gravitated towards odd numbers and the number 3. So this is usually applicable in interior design, furniture groupings, vignettes, which we will later on discuss. While even numbers actually create symmetry, it's the odd numbers that create a very good visual interest. We were talking about it kanina, why odd? Our brains are wired that way, in a way wherein it doesn't stop at 2. Parang you're automatically looking for a third, and you have to test that out. When you look at 2 objects, parang when they're grouped together, parang you're looking for a third one.
Isn't that odd?
Oh my God.
Diba?
So odd numbers really force your eye to move around the grouping and then have an extension of that around the room. When you create vignettes, diba vignettes, as discussed before, is a grouping of objects that you put on a shelf or you put on a table. So try nyo to group just 2. Parang bitin talaga. Parang there needs to be a third one. So that works kasi you can put the decors in certain levels of hierarchy. Parang the first is higher, the second is mid, and then the third is lower. And then the second one is when pillows. Parang in a sofa, you put only 2, ay parang may kulang. Parang there needs to be a third one. Diba? Even in mixing of patterns and colors, parang 3 dapat. And then in the grouping of furniture, kasi what happens is, and you'll notice this, especially in living room areas, you have a sofa, you have 1-seater on the left side, and then maybe an ottoman or another 1-seater on the right side. Last one is in drop lights. when you drop lights in a corner of a room, in the center of a room, if you have a high ceiling, you can't just drop 2 lights. You have to drop a third one. So 1, 2, and 3. Again, that kind of like leveling works.
So the third interior design secret
is actually the power of scale and proportion.
Scale.
So the scale and proportion, usually that's interchanged, but there are really, it's basically 2 different things, right? So scale is the understanding of an object in relation to the space or the object in relation to the human scale. So think of a macro scale. That's when you talk about scale. But when you talk about proportion, proportion is the understanding of parts of an object or a design element in an object. For example, in a chair, are the legs proportioned to the overall dimension of a chair? Where in a scale, scale is the furniture itself in proportion to the entire room. So, yun yung difference nilang dalawa. So, here are a few tips to practice scale and proportion at home. So, the first one is in furniture, di ba? So, yung scaling of furniture in relation to the space, is your ceiling high? Syempre kung high yung ceiling mo, your furniture should relatively be higher, or any art piece that you wanna put should be relatively higher. Para it doesn't look peony and punggok
Or
in a
nalulunod.
space. Or nalulunod ka with all
Yeah.
the negative space. So, you always have to think about that. Now, if you have a condominium that's small, you also have to have a modest furniture so as not to make your space look very overcrowded. Kasi pag mas malaki yung gamit mo, at ang liit lang yung space, parang lalong nahahalata na ang liit lang talaga ng space mo. So, you think of that kind of scaling whenever you buy furniture. That's important kasi
Very
common
important,
yun
yeah.
common mistake that I see. You can also practice scale and proportion in the use of your decorative elements in the walls. So usually, when you hang wall arts and decors, you check on the laki of the wall. Obviously, you're not supposed to just hang a tiny piece of painting or maybe 2 of that on a vast canvas. You have to...
Kaya nga pag high ceiling sa wall, di ba? Kaya nag-gallery tayo, di ba?
Yes, or sometimes even just one massive, art piece. So you look at it in that perspective too. So the third one is when you decorate or furnish your walls too. You think of your 4 walls as 100%, right? Parang that's your blank space. You scale the things that you want to put against it based on that canvas that you have. So you also have to have negative space and leave your walls to breathe. Again, I always say hindi kailangan siksikan ng lahat ng walls. Kailangan humihinga yung walls nyo. Now it's furniture in relation to the other furniture pieces around the room. So, a common mistake that I always see, kunyari a dining table for 12. You can't use a chair that is meant for a dining table of 4.
Yeah.
So, the width of a 12-seater dining table is wider than a 4. So, usually your furniture should be slightly taller, maybe have an armrest, slightly wider, just so it appears to be proportionate to the whole set. And then the last one is scale and proportion of the furniture. I couldn't stress this more because I see this talaga quite a lot. It's to use your space as a gauge on how big your furniture will be. And that's the reason why you have to hire interior designers like us. Kasi we can give you technical guide on what size of furniture you have to buy.
Yeah.
That's the 5 tips that we can think of that you can apply in your space for the third interior design secret.
So the fourth secret is...
The power of layering.
Yeah, layering.
So I'm sure, hindi yung layering of clothes ha? Parang
Yeah.
excited ka parang winter clothes ka nun.
Ikaw
Hindi
naman.
ganon.
Grabe ka naman. Grabe ka naman,
ready na
Miss
siya.
B.
Ready nang magbakasyon. The power of layering is actually a successful interior design secret in getting all the elements in a room feel put together. And kasi when you style a space, it needs to feel very natural. And the way to do it is to do layering. How do we apply this? Number one, in art. When you put together pieces of wall art, especially pag nakasandal lang in a wall, like the one that we did with Danny, we layered them by threes. Ayun na naman, power of three. So we layered them on top of one another to create kind of like a visual friction too, no? Parang it's kind of like that. And then we always do that in furniture. We layer furniture in a space. So parang there's furniture here, there's another furniture right behind it. Or kunyari, there's a console table and then underneath would be 2 ottoman chairs. So that's kind of considered layering too. And pillows, you've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Diba? Yung pillows, hindi naman sila nakahilara na ganon, diba? Yung pillows nakaganon. Right? And then another one right in front of it. So that's also considered layering. Curtains. We also layer curtains. You have a sheer, and then you have the textured right outside it or a block out. And then rugs. Diba? In our house, if you watch the Be Home, there was also layering of the rugs. So, ganun lang yun. I mean, you add this kasi it adds a lot of interest. It creates depth of field.
So the last secret is
The power of high-low. What does that mean?
high-low. Hi. Hello. Yun ba yun?
Hindi ko lang na-guess. In fairness, natawa ako dyan. Hindi ka corny masyado today. The power of high-low. It's similar to how my fashion sense is. The power of that, it doesn't mean that everything needs to be high-end. Diba? Everything doesn't need to be designer. So you can always mix and match. So what you do is, what is your hero furniture? If your hero furniture is, say, a really nice Molteni table, right?
Wow, Multeni.
Diba? And you have like Molteni chairs around it. Yung buffet cabinet can be, somewhere in between. It doesn't have to be that high-end as long as it works together. I think it's that It's similar to really how fashion is, diba? Parang you don't wear head-to-toe designers. It applies in furniture. It applies in accessories. Kunyari, you have a really bespoke chinoiserie vase that is so original and ancient and antique, diba? You have to pair it with a simpler one just to highlight it. Kasi it's like that. You can't put together na parehong antique, then no one becomes a hero. Kasi the good thing about practicing the high and low, there's a hero, right? And it deserves that kind of
In short,
focus.
may umaangat.
Oo. So, that's actually what we do. Basta, yung low nyo, mukhang mahal. I think that's what's important It's your taste, to train your taste to pinpoint which one looks expensive, even if budget-wise, it's really not. There you have it, 5 interior design secrets which we have shared to you, and sana you can apply that at home and then take a photo, send it to us.
Share.
Tag us. We're in Homebodies too. We're in Instagram. And then again, don't forget to subscribe.
And hit that notification bell.
Like, or put in just comments, type in all your comments here, and share.
Yeah.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Cindy, Mrs. B.
I'm Mado, Mr. B.
And you're watching Mr. and Mrs. B
of Moss Design House.
Woo!